Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Can I say this?
Yeah.
I say this to the group?
Absolutely.
Okay. Myself, I'm gonna kind of put myself out there. Myself, I come from the inner city. I mean, like the hard, like down in the South Bronx and out in South side of Queens or South side of Jamaica, really, really rough. I mean, really rough. Like I grew up knowing what a shoot reality was. Okay, seeing tires and watching them sing the cat off the wine bottle. And then also the cat bottle. And then, years ago, when that bottle had these things on the cap that you could bend back.
Yep.
And watching them bend it back and hold it so they can cook up whatever the heck it is. I feel like to say this. Okay, that what happened with the welfare movement and the exiting the man out of the household played a big role into where we're at today. In destruction of men. The 1 minute it was, oh, she's pregnant at a young age. And then when the masses got hold to it, it turned into Planned Parenthood. I remember Richard Pryor saying that there was a couple driving in the car. It was the ghetto. He saw the guy on the ground. He was messed up off of whatever drugs. And they got home. They got back to Florida. And the daughter was the power of us actually guaranteed that we're of starting to feel something that has deteriorated to such an extent that I can't tell who's who, and it's thinking of things because I have grandchildren, and my constant thought is what's being left alone.
Yeah.
And it actually gets to a point where it hurts.
Yeah.
When you become an adult, as I became an adult, and myself in relationship with life, and you get that medium at an age, I'm at my seniors now, you get that medium, and you want for the things that you actually wanted to get, and I just see it like, wow, where am I, where is my offspring going to be in the next 5 years?
Yeah, and I think that's when we said early on, from a society standpoint, I think you said it, Lady Wisdom. I mean, we're all dealing within this country, within this, our environments, state of arrested development because of what's transpired through life and the experiences that we've all been going through and we're experiencing now.
Absolutely. I mean, I get the family thing. Unfortunately, some people feel like overcompensating for what I'm going to give my children what I didn't have. So I'm going to give them the material things I didn't have, but what about the other things that you obviously didn't have? Why don't you give them what you had? Whether it was extra love, did you give extra time? Did you give extra energy? Did you give them an extra hug and tell them that you love them? We don't have a lot of that today, but we do have some families that are experiencing it. And in my life, again, I've dealt with a lot of dysfunction growing up. So I experienced the opposite of arrested development. I experienced mature and faster. I've been doing and dealing with adult things since I was 10. Cooking, cleaning, taking care of kids, going to school, still making it happen. So what I wanted to do is to give each of my children a childhood. And again, it goes back to you can't get from someone what you don't have. So I became that PTA mom, the teen mom, the coach. Education is very huge. I am very proud. of each one of my children. They are now adults and they are having children. And if you ask any of them, I did family. They take no blame. In their mind, they do no wrong. Then you have those that just refuse to seek help.
There's definitely those that are.
We definitely, mental health
Mhm.
is so huge.
Yep.
You can't, when you're worn out, and I'm gonna say
Shelley,
this.
give me 1 second. I'm sorry. A lot of people are having issues with Facebook and they're looking and they're saying they can't see us. Again, you can always go to the website. You can go to genesisradio.com or you can go to.
I just fixed it.
You did www.thesistahship.com. It is a radio station, so you can hear us clearly on the radio. If you can't see us on Facebook, and you can also call in at 1-888-304-4401. If you are having issues, please go to the website.
It's
and
back.
click on the button.
It's back.
It's back up.
Go ahead.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. And by the way, thank you for the last caller as well, for the
Yes.
comments and insights.
Absolutely. We have to learn to grow. Immaturity is a big part. Men are not immature, and they don't mature as soon as females mature. So when you're dealing with an immature female, you deal with a lot more. It's more noticeable than if you deal with an immature male. Nonetheless, you're dealing with immaturity. So when you're dealing with two immature people, they tend to not get along because they're seeing things they're not in the same level, and they're not seeing it from a mature standpoint. So that means they're not doing second thoughts. They're just responsive. I'm going to respond to this because it's in my face. I had to explain to somebody the other day about respect. So there was a point where people were getting into big fights. Some people get shot and killed if a shoe got stepped on.
No.
And they said that was because they were being disrespected. You mean you got your shoe stepped on and you felt totally and utterly disrespected? Well, what about those people that marched in the 60s and they got spit on?
Mm-hmm.
That's disrespect.
Yes.
But they didn't pull a gun
Right.
and shoot somebody.
Right.
Or you were in a crowded room where they stepped on your foot.
Mm-hmm.
But again, immaturity is huge.
Mm-hmm.
I speak to the sisters because I'm not a male. I need my sisters to look for help. Some sisters are out here and they would rather have a piece of a man than to become whole on their own. You have got to be whole when you're dealing with somebody. You can't give your children a part of you. We hurt. Women hurt more emotionally than physically. But it's a matter of, if you go back into someone's history, you will find out that in the process of them dealing, if they're not looking to get any kind of help, they pass that on You know, those generational stories.
Yes.
Last caller was talking about that we're not getting,
Mm-hmm.
where you pass on that generational trauma,
Right. Right.
which arrests the next person's
Mm-hmm.
growth.
Mm-hmm.
It's a huge, the topic itself is huge. And people that don't want to take responsibility and say that's where we had a prior caller that said that it's about your mind and the way you and the way you deal with it. You got to go into side self. When a child is traumatized, they don't necessarily know how to go in self. Adults don't know how to go in self. You're talking about a 40-year-old that don't know how to go into self. It takes some people years before they understand that they are responsible for certain things.
Mm-hmm.
When we are children, we are not responsible for what happens to us as children
Mm-hmm.
and the choices that have been made for us. But as adults, age-wise as well, as adults, we have the opportunity to make different choices, right?
And we have a responsibility.
And so
We have a responsibility as adults.
when you grew up, if you
Mhm.
grew up and you didn't grow up with acknowledging your mistakes,
Mm-hmm.
and then your child makes a mistake, and then you want them to fess up to their mistake, what have you shown them?
Mm-hmm.
You
Mhm.
contradict yourself.
Right.
So when you're not taking it's so huge. Like, my head is spinning with this, so much that goes on with this. These are psychological viewpoints,
Right.
not only to the average person, but these are studies.
Yeah. There's definitely with what you stated, and I also want to do the flip side of that, you know, because I know we're focused on children. There are adults. Oh, we got a call coming in.
Okay.
All right, this is the Sistahship. Hello, caller.
Hello, everyone. This is Mama C, and I'm listening.
Hey, Mama C.
And this conversation is definitely hitting home, I think, for everyone who's listening. You know, I was thinking about when I became pregnant with my daughter, and really even before then, and when I was 19, and I said, now I'm going to be the captain of my own boat, and I'm going to make my own decisions and chart my own courses.
Mm-hmm.
However, there had not been any modeling in my home.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, a lot of times we say these things because we've heard them. Oh, I'm going to be captain of my own ship. But what does that mean?
Right.
I had no clue what it meant. I just knew that I wanted something better than what I came from.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I got pregnant with my daughter, I knew that I wanted her to have something better than what I had.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew that meant going back to school, getting my GED, going on to college, getting a decent job so that I could provide for her.
Mm-hmm.
But there was still a lot of healing that I was trying to do in the process.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I didn't know that it was healing. I knew there was just a lot of stuff that I had to deal with, a lot of pain that I had encountered throughout my childhood and even in my young adulthood.
Mm-hmm.
So even now at 67, I'm still healing
Mm-hmm.
because there are things that are coming out that I didn't even know I still had to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
So healing is a forever process when you've gone through a very difficult, dysfunctional, and unloving childhood.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I knew that I wanted to do was to make sure that my daughter knew that she was loved and that she was cared for and that, you know, she was important and that, you know, she didn't have to go through what I went through.
Mm-hmm.
So as a single parent, it was very difficult to go through all the to weed through all the traumas I had gone through in my childhood, go back to school and get my life together and raise a child and try and find a life for myself. It was all overwhelming,
Mm-hmm.
but I had to take it step by step by step. And then I had to learn not to beat myself up for what I didn't know or what I didn't do. All I can say at this particular point is my heart has always been in the right place. And I've always loved with all the love that I can give, not only to my daughter, but to the people in my life. So as I continue this journey, I'm still learning, I'm still growing, I'm still healing. And this is a process that I think that those of us who've gone through very dysfunctional and disheartening things in our lives have to accept. It's not an overnight process. It doesn't just magically, because you decide you're going to do what needs to be done to heal. And back to what Sherry was saying, I learned to go inward as a very young child. Why? Because that was my escape when I was being sexually abused by my father. I learned to go inward. So I didn't know what was happening. I wasn't in tune with what was happening outside of me because I was hiding inside of me. So I learned that there was solace and there was a place a place of safety for me when I was a kid. I still do that now. I still go inward and I still find that safe place and I still pray and I talk to God and I ask for direction and I do my very best. But I think everyone needs to understand this is not an overnight thing. And
Absolutely not.
This generation wants things, quick, fast, and now. It is not a quick, fast. Healing is not a quick, fast, and now process. You got to be patient with yourself, and you've got to develop the level of self-love that's essential for taking step by step by step.
I got a question.
Come out, jump out at you. Yes, go ahead.
I got a question. Arrested Development, right? And I feel everything you're saying. It's logical. It makes sense to me, right? How do we move forward? Is there a service for counseling to address arrested development, these situations? Is this a specialized counseling or is this covered by general counseling?
I think it's for the most part dealt with by general counseling. I'm not definite on that, but I think first of all, a lot of counseling is people who counsel by the book. They counsel based on what they have been taught. But I always tell people, if you need to go into counseling, find someone who is going to counsel on a spiritual level, because what's going on is at the spirit level. It's at the spirit. That person has to be able to get to the core of what's going on with you. If they're just dealing with the surface and not helping you to dig deep in to extract the roots of the pain that you're feeling, because most people are hiding the real deal. They're only touching on the surface of what's going on in their life. You got to go all the way. You got to dive all the way into yourself, and you've got to be willing to pull out or extract the roots of the pain that you've been going through. And that's a hard process, Terry. That's a hard process. And a lot of people don't have what it takes because they're too afraid to step to their demons, to step and to face what's going on in their lives. We have to be willing to face what's going on in our lives, not just from a surface level, but from deep within, because that's where the treasure is. We've got to pull out dump the garbage, pull out the weeds, clear the garden of our souls so that when we go there, we can find peace and solace, because we live in a world where all kinds of craziness is going on. So, I just wanted to say, I think people need to understand this is not an overnight process. I started the process of healing and not understanding exactly what that meant. I started at age 19. At age 67, I'm still doing it. And sometimes stuff jumps out at me. I tell you, I go through these moments when I just have to back away from everything and everyone because I know something's coming and something I may have to deal with. So, I think everyone needs to know you have to be loving and you have to be very patient with yourself while you go through this process. And jumping from relationship to relationship is not going to solve it, because all you have to do is jump from one devil to another devil.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's about it for now.
Thank you, Mama C. We appreciate you. It's something that she said, it hit, because it is, so I want to read something. Dr. Eric Erickson, and I think even Lady Wisdom did some research on this as well, or is even aware. He's the famous psychologist from 1902 who proposed these stages, found that unresolved childhood development tasks leave a lifelong residue of emotional immaturity. With that said, in other words, your original immature, unidentified subconscious issues are controlling your behaviors and even your thinking. So you have to, and back to Terry, what your question was, I feel that, in my opinion, there's a level of counseling that, general counseling, I think it depends on how deep rooted in your subconscious there's issues that you went through in life, or the traumas that you went through in life. And that stunted your development from an emotional standpoint. I feel that, maybe even a psychologist, I think it's all dependent on, you have to also understand where your mind is at that moment, right? And whether it's through people telling you that you're in some type of arrested development, or you've gone through some emotional traumas in your life, or physical traumas in your life that is created an environment that makes you feel stuck and not able to relate to people in a very positive or mature level. So I think it depends on how deep rooted this is. And the other thing that Mama C had mentioned about is, making sure that her daughter knew that she was in a loving environment regardless of what she was going through. And I think it also goes back to what Ugg was saying, is that your vibration, or what you are feeling, although you're trying to compensate what you've been going through by giving love, and trying to heal someone else or make sure they're not feeling the way you're feeling, they still feel those things, those emotions, right? And they're still kind of looking at you like, well, mom's not, they know, children know, they're very intuitive. They know when a parent is going through something. But again, going back to the subconsciousness is really understanding deep down inside what you're dealing with, or how, life can be very overwhelming if you are dealing with arrested development. Everything becomes very overwhelming. So you have to learn that if you're dealing with those situations, you have to get some type of counseling. You have to talk to somebody and get to the brass tacks of what exactly is happening, why it's happening, why you're feeling you can't relate to people, or having issues in relationships or things of that nature.
Okay,
to get to that.
I'm gonna stop you right there.
What, Terry?
I'm gonna stop you right there. Right?
What, Terry?
Because Sherry told me I had arrested development, right? And I'm gonna tell you why she said because I didn't play in the dirty Johnny Pump water.
I did not. That was not me.
Right? I didn't play in the dirty Johnny Pump water. So because I can't relate to the kids that played in the Johnny Pump water.
That's not arrested development, by the way.
I did not say that.
My grandmother didn't let me play in the dirty in the street water in the Johnny Pump. I didn't play in the street.
I can't.
But listen to him, because Terry is real serious about what he's saying.
No, I'm saying, well, because
okay, so what is it?
A lot has to do with your upbringing. Because guess what? Because something as simple as that, right? I watched the kids play in Johnny Pump, and I was curious about it. It looked like they was having fun.
Okay.
But my grandmother made it perfectly clear that, that
wasn't for you.
Yeah, I won't do that.
Okay.
So the kids who grew up that way, who experienced all those things, we're different.
I mean, everybody. No, it does. It has a lot to do with the raising of the children.
Right.
A lot of people don't want to hear that arrested development started in childhood. Okay, so it started as a teen, or it could have been a young adult. Some kind of trauma has caused it. But you may not have lived there.
But what I'm saying is, it could be something as subtle as that.
It could
that
be.
Could trigger arrested development. I didn't get to play with the kids in the street in the Johnny Pump.
And
So I sat on the step and watched them play, and they looked like they was having fun.
but
you know?
So
well,
being a child.
so
you're
you
saying.
weren't, but your maturity level didn't stop because you couldn't play in the water. There's a difference between a trauma causing you.
No, I went to the YMCA. I went swimming.
Well, again, so there's a trauma that did not happen to you, fortunately, that didn't cause you to feel like Arrested Development. But you may have gotten to a place where you decided that that's not gonna happen to me anymore.
Well, they called me a nerd all my damn life. So, you know.
But you didn't like being bullied either.
No, I didn't like being bullied.
It didn't feel good.
No.
It didn't put you to a place where you just decided that as you got older.
It made me angry.
Well, and it got
Salty.
you to a place. Okay, then that's probably where you suffer when you're Arrested Development.
It wasn't the Johnny Pump water.
It wasn't
just
the
saying.
water or their lack of being able to play in it.
Right.
It was something that hurt you deep down to your core. Now,
I wasn't a street level barbarian.
well, you have some kids that are not street level barbarians now, but they'd rather just go get a gun and go shoot up a school. But that's, again, as one of the callers said, it's what you see. The example of things that they're seeing is what they're doing. And seeking attention is one of the things that somebody that might have been told their whole life you're ugly. If you've been told that you're ugly and you've been bullied about your size, or you've been bullied because you wore glasses or certain things, it all depends on how long and what. After a while, somebody call you stupid over and over and over again. At some point, you start believing them.
Right.
And so no matter how smart you are, you start second guessing yourself.
Absolutely.
You start at that place, you're stuck there. That
Big
is,
shout out to the super stupid.
Terry, that's not nice. Arrested Development is just being stuck in a place where you can't come out. I know some people that have been incarcerated, and in the process of their incarceration, they did long bids. I'm not talking about these 18 months or 6 months or something like that. I'm talking about somebody that has done 16 years.
Yeah.
Or I can't get a time frame on it, but I do know that there are several people I know personally that when they came out, they was kind of stuck where they were before they went in. In the year that they went in. And the one thing I had said, what ended up happening is that was where they was the most secure. They was the most strength. They was the most powerful. And that's where they got to that point where I'm not going to live this way. I'm going to live that way. And then at some point, they got taken, they went a different direction and they became incarcerated. When they came out, they weren't sure why they flip phone or where the flip phones even came from. You had some people that kept coming out and going back in, and the question was, how do they keep going back in? Because what they were familiar with was inside.
Exactly.
When they came outside, they were no longer familiar with the world out there, and it was scary. It was a scary place for them. So they dealt with it the way they dealt with it. Their coping mechanism is different. How you deal with it. I suggest that those that deal with Arrested Development and any other mental health issue, that they get help.
Absolutely.
That they seek a therapist, a talk therapist. And if the talk therapist thinks that you need something different or someone different that can maybe have to prescribe some kind of assistance to help you get to a different place, the only way you'll find out is going.
So you think every person that's been in prison suffers from Arrested Development?
I did not say every. You didn't hear me say everyone.
I'm just
what
asking
I
a
say
question.
Is some people that have had long bids.
I was reading the comment here actually.
It's some people that have. I can tell you of 3 people I know personally that is a part of my life that they have suffered Arrested Development because they were incarcerated, and when they did their long bid, they came home, they were stuck where they were before.
You just made it sound like being in prison was a good thing. You called it incarcerated.
That's the name of it.
Call it prison.
Prison.
That was politically correct.
Incarceration.
Incarceration is too politically correct. Is that what
which
you
is
just
incarcerating your mind from development.
There you go.
Exactly.
But I was reading a comment here that about somebody was did 20 years or something.
Mhm.
So the years should have been socialized. He was institutionalized and lives his life. Just bounced up. I lost the comment.
Oh.
Jeez, forget it.
And lives his life to this day from an incarceration perspective.
See?
And that is
that's
called
exactly
being stagnated
Right.
where they were. Right, he has
Right.
an institutionalized mentality. Does it mean that does he have to stay there? Nope.
no.
That's
right.
like being right. They say that you could be in prison in your mind, and they use prison in this emphasis of the gated room where there's the lock, the door being wide open, and they're out, and there's no lock on it, but they stay right there because that's where they're safe at. They never realize that they're free. They never realize that they're free because they're stuck there.
That sound like them folks that live down south to me, but I ain't gonna,
He is.
Behave.
they in Arrested Development.
Do you have any friends that you know that, or some or people that you know in your life that has gone through something tragically, and it's a continued pattern at what they're doing? Like some people are conditioned for certain things. So do you know people in your life? Because then you have to decide at yourself.
I've seen women that's conditioned for abuse.
And so what do you think happened to them? Some kind of abuse happened to them?
Yeah,
Got them
yeah.
there?
Well, yeah. Bad relationships. You often hear sometimes that people say when they are physically abused, that means they're loved. You never heard that before?
Oh yeah.
I've heard it, but that's a point. That's a place of
Stupidity.
That's a place in that domestic violence that they were conditioned.
Absolutely.
Condition means that something was done, right?
Right.
So they were told that's what happened.
Or is that Stockholm syndrome?
It's not Stockholm syndrome.
Okay, all right.
It's a form of conditioning, right? You repeat it over and over again, right? It's like learning your spelling words. If you read it long enough, if you say it long enough, and you write it long enough, it is what it is.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And you said about examples. So I'll flip it just a little here as far as an example of someone who can be in Arrested Development. It's also how they're brought up, from a sense of not allowing them, or maybe you're thinking you're doing something right, is allowing them the ability to mature and develop emotionally, as well as physically, as well as, just again, from a society standpoint, just doing things for themselves rather than doing it for them. You are stunting their growth. So they're pretty much stuck in an environment of being still a child per se, because you're doing everything for them. And I've known, elders, older people, and I'll say elders because older than me, that are still relying on a parent or a grandparent to do for them, versus because they don't know any different, because that's how they were taught. That's how they were taught. That mom's always going to do this for me, or grandma's always going to do this for me. And what they don't realize is that when they're out in society, you can't have an expectation that that person is always going to be there for you to do things for you. Then how are you going to manage through life? You can't live life if you're constantly doing that and, paying the bills or writing a letter or, whatever the case may be. I'm just saying, yeah, they might have a job and they're working, but if you're doing everything else for them, making doctor's appointments and this and that, you are putting your child, or that adult now, in a level of arrested development because you've stunted their growth. So, let's be real. There are parents who are doing this to their children today. And I know we talked about this when we were talking about raising men, and, we talked about men specifically, or boys to men, but, this is women as well. I mean, although for most part, women are, we try to get out of the home at an early age, as young adults and live by our own means or rules or whatever have you. But, again, we have to think of that part of Arrested Development as well, is that, we sometimes put our children, it doesn't even have to be traumatic. It could also be that we are putting our children in a space of Arrested Development because we are not allowing them to grow and be independent.
Well, you can't,
Well, some of us done was cooking at 10.
I absolutely
I cooked.
was.
I cooked at a young age.
I cooked, I cleaned, I
At
took care
10.
of my siblings.
Sorry, you wasn't cooking at 10.
10 years old.
No, I didn't cook.
At,
Saying.
look,
I still don't cook. That's
at
what I'm
10
saying.
years old, I was making lasagna.
Right. Now that's a hard pill to swallow.
What's
Well,
that? The
At,
fact that,
at cooking at 10.
why is that hard? Look, I had two parents who worked full time. My dad had two jobs. I mean, as a child, you know, I would lived in a home that the parents had to work. I had three sisters, younger sisters. I'm the eldest of four, and I had to, when they got home from school, I had to be the, you know, and I won't say parent because I didn't parent them. I just was the big sister who had to be mature enough to take care of them while my parents were away. So yeah, cooking, cleaning, and let me tell you, my father was military.
So how many
You want
times
to talk about a toothbrush on behind the toilet and making sure the scrubbing out all the dirt and everything?
but how many times did rescue and the fire department have to come to your house because you was cooking?
Never.
Sherry,
never.
Zero.
Never.
Tiffany Kofa, you was cooking.
Zero.
You wasn't cooking. You was home by yourself.
I was cooking.
You cooked at 10?
Mm-hmm.
Me?
Did the fire department come for you?
No, I didn't cook.
Oh, okay. You ain't cook at all. Okay.
My mother cooked.
All right. So
Remember, his
good.
mother was
that's
home.
why your mother was home. You thankfully.
I mean, and that doesn't necessarily, does that mean that you have the Arrested Development? It does not, but it can lead to other issues.
Mm-hmm.
So you saying that's why I don't cook today?
No,
No.
I'm saying that you choose not to cook today.
Right.
And then if you do cook, it's when you feel like cooking for you.
Right.
There's a difference.
That's not Arrested Development, by the way.
Okay.
I think he was trying to find out if we try to say he's arrested. He's being
No,
Arrested
he
Development.
doesn't have Arrested Development.
No, I think going back to my point is that if you are a parent who is, even as a child is growing into
At least not in that
adolescence,
area.
right? And you're constantly still doing for them, you are stunting
handicapping them, yes.
exactly. You're stunting their growth and their development.
And
So
maturity.
and maturity. Correct.
Well, I have a friend. Let me be clear. I have a friend of mine, and she and I had a conversation. Her two young men were in their 20s, and she was cooking and cleaning. And her response was, I'm gonna make it difficult for my sons to just get any woman because they're gonna look for somebody that's like me.
Mm.
So she cooked, she cleaned, she even put their clothes away for them. Asked them if they needed gas for their cars, all kinds of chaos. But in the process of it, and I had a conversation with her, I said that she's like, I'm gonna make them know, I'm gonna make them know, like somehow the
They can't
person
find
that comes
no other-
along,
yeah.
she's not gonna be good enough for them. So
Right.
they're gonna always be looking for me in somebody. That's a problem.
That is a
There's
problem.
a mental health issue going on with that mama.
but no, because most men look for a little bit of their mama in any woman that they
do.
you know.
And then, the same men that's and that's the same for women. Some women look for a little bit of daddy in the
Right.
man that they are with,
Right.
because they may not have had one, or they need to have that shoulder when they're speaking to their mate. In a relationship, let's be clear, both men and women wear different hats in that particular relationship. But you don't have a lot of them that understand it. You have to be mature enough to understand that if I'm taking care of you because you're sick, I'm not mothering you. I'm taking care of you because you're sick.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But you got some guys that will say to a woman and vice versa, stop trying to be my parent.
Right.
You're not my daddy. You can't tell me that. You're not my mommy. You can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
That's the issue. Those are a lot of issues. And these are the people that's walking around. Like I said, we are walking and working, living in a world with walking wounded. In many ways, shapes, and forms. Does that mean everybody has Arrested Development? I think we have all been traumatized in one way or another. But do I think that we all deal with it the same? Absolutely not. I think that some people learn to get past
Absolutely.
and learn to live with it. You don't get over anything, but you learn to live with it. I think that anybody that is suffering and realize that they are dealing with some mental health issues, I think that need some kind of mental health, it will not be overnight. It will take some time to heal. A lot of people don't understand talk therapy is huge. And if you have the right doctor sitting with you that may have been through some things or have experienced many people with that same
Right.
situation, they will come at you so evenly that you won't even realize that you're sitting with a therapist, but they get into the root of what's going on with you.
Do you think writing down your stories, your trauma is a good form of therapy?
I think it
I
is
think
a good
it is,
form.
absolutely. You know, it's funny because when you said about writing stuff down, I mentioned a while back in one of the other shows about writing poetry. Sometimes when I'm dealing with something, I would resort to writing poetry to get my emotions and my feelings out, and I feel better about myself.
That's how I wrote songs.
See, and that's the
Some people
thing.
put it in their music.
Think about it.
Well, we
People
know-
are putting in their music.
We know that.
What?
Listen to me. Mary J. Blige.
Oh yes, hello.
You are my girl.
Oh, I love her.
But
Love
when
her.
I tell you,
She's damaged goods.
you have on many levels
Yes.
with walking
Something.
with other people while they were going through the same traumas that you
Mhm.
were.
Mhm.
She put it in her music.
Mhm.
You got a lot of people that put what they was experiencing in their music,
Mhm.
in their rap,
Mhm.
in their music, in the rhythm and blues. That's their R&B. In your blues,
Yes.
you had it.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And if you listen to
Wasn't
country
nothing like the
long enough-
blues.
and if you listen to country
Absolutely.
music, that is a form of blues with a little twinge of southern on it,
Absolutely.
but it also tells stories for people.
Mm-hmm.
So is that a form of therapy?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Writing books, writing not. I mean, just so much. I have a friend of mine who actually changed her name, to be honest, because she's dealt with so much trauma growing up that she wanted to change her identity.
She wanted to disassociate
herself with that, you know, with whatever she dealt with.
Now,
And
why would she want to do that?
she wanted to become who she is today and not live in the state that she was living in for so many years. So her way of getting over that or getting through that for herself was, I'm going to change my identity. I am who I am, but I'm going to change my name. I'm going to write a novel, and that's how she did it. But, you know, we are here. What I want to say is, again, if anybody has any questions, comments, 888-304-4401. We are going to continue to have
4
this
o'clock today.
dialogue until 4 o'clock today.
Okay.
We're definitely going to continue this dialogue. I know some people think we're shutting on down at 3:30. We're still going. We're going to still be going until 4 o'clock today. So please, 888-304-4401. But yeah, for her healing was in writing. She started writing children's books. And I think, again, from an experience standpoint, because she saw people children who were experiencing things in their environment with their parents, that was going to create a scenario where, as adults, they were going to end up being in this arrested development phase. But then she also did it as a healing for herself as well. And that's why she changed.
We see a lot of children's books now
Yeah.
that help them in areas that I can't personally say. The library was my club.
Mm-hmm.
I clubbed at the library. That's where I was. If you wanted to know where I was hanging, that's where I was hanging. And I read a ton of books, but some of these new children's books are deep.
Hey, look,
Teach you how to love your own hair.
Look, I just saw a
absolutely.
title of a book where the book said last year I was Tommy's daddy. This year I'm Billy's daddy. So that was a book about a father who left his house and moved into another house and became a stepfather to another child. And I was like, that's kind of crazy. Now, why would you want to? I think that's something that should be sheltered away from kids.
Why?
I think that because it's the dad's experience, not the kid's experience.
But-
Teaching a child to embrace their hair, the curliness of their hair, teaching a child to embrace the fact that they got to wear glasses, teaching a child the fact that they may have a same-sex parent household. Teaching children how to embrace certain things is a beautiful thing. It's to help them to love the skin that they're in. But the way he just described that book, it wasn't the child. He said last year he was so and so's daddy, and now this year he's so and so's daddy. That's not the child. That sounds like it's the adult.
So it's okay. Maybe I misunderstood what.
Well, to me, I looked at that title of the book. They were talking about the different books about why that DEI thing don't work with all the books that they said the reason why they don't want to teach critical race theory and all the things that fall into that same category. Well, that was one of the books, you know, and about somebody got two mommies and somebody got two daddies and all these type of books, you know. So, and I kind of agree. Some of these things are the birth of Arrested Development, you know. Some of these things that we put in front of the kids, you know.
Well, I mean, it's definitely from example and experience.
Right.
That's where the Arrested Development comes from, example and experience. There's a lot of us that are hiding, that will hide from our trauma and dare you to bring it up. We will see somebody, we could be sitting having a plain old conversation with somebody and something is said and you see that person is triggered.
Just triggered.
But all people won't see it. It's somebody that is experienced and observing other people that will see the trigger. And once they are triggered, you've got to try to figure out how to deal with them, because some people respond. Their method of reaction is dangerous because they usually respond in anger. They don't necessarily respond in response of, oh, you know.
I would like to read that book. Where did you see that book at? The only reason, because that's stuff that people experience. So is it a bad book to write for a kid, or is it a book that's teaching them?
Well, the way he said it and the way I received it, let me put it that way. The way I received it, it was from the father's perspective, not necessarily the child's perspective. So because of that, I don't know if it's a children's book. Doesn't mean
well actually, I saw that
book.
title of that book. Don Lemon was talking about it on CNN. Some of the books that he had a guest on there he had somebody who was pro critical race theory and all those things, and then you had somebody who was anti. And the woman that was anti, she was showing all these book titles of why we shouldn't be teaching these kids all these different things. So she was pulling out all these different books of why they shouldn't teach these things, because it all falls under the same umbrella.
Well, then that's essentially saying, and if maybe I'm internalizing it this way, but that's essentially saying that you don't teach diversity, equity, and inclusion in the schools.
Well, that's technically what they're trying to do. Remember, that is one of the biggest fights right now. They're trying to take those out of schools. They're not necessarily dealing with it.
But I'm listening to the conversation that we're having here today. I listened to the callers. I listened to what Mama C called in and said, right? When I think about it, well, some of that stuff is the birthplace of Arrested Development. So I can see where some of those books shouldn't be there. Some inclusion stuff need to be taught, yes. But I think some of that stuff is a little too far from the left.
But the reality is it's here. So how do we hide it? Why should we hide it? Someone has to speak about it or talk about it to teach the kid that's in that situation what's happening.
But to me, that's like telling a kid, well, last year I was your daddy, but I ain't your daddy no more because I'm his daddy now. You know, that's like that's traumatizing to a kid.
So it can be, but I think it's dependent on how you manage and approach the discussion, because the reality is, in this society, things have changed, have evolved, and there are differences that we have to recognize and acknowledge. And until we ourselves, because we don't in some instances want to acknowledge it, we are stuck in Arrested Development as a country, because these things are here and now. They are what they are. You know, some of us may not want to accept it, and that's their prerogative. But at the end of the day, that doesn't mean that we just hide these elements and you know, again, suppress them because we are in fear, because I see it as fear of a society that's grown and developed and you know, matured, than what it was from previous years.
But I also think that shouldn't be blanketed like that. You can't blanket everybody's development.
No, absolutely not.
So
It's
if your
situational.
child is in a room and they decide we're going to teach one of the reasons critical race theory, first of all, we already know that there's racial issues in the world.
Mhm.
But here in the United States, it's so huge to the point we want to just skip over and forget that certain parts of history happened.
Happens. Yep.
Now, things that are happening today, do we want to blanket it? Can all kids handle it? It's like so there's points where they want to raise your child to another grade level because they find that your child is more mature.
Mhm.
But why didn't they take that kid over there? Because they found that that child wasn't there where that other child was.
Mhm.
So do I treat them the same? I have to be mindful of who I'm dealing with.
Mhm. That's
And
situational.
that's
Yep.
what I'm saying. You cannot just blanket it that we should
Agreed.
teach all of this to everyone.
Agreed.
I
Okay,
think
well,
that
look.
all parents should have an opportunity to decide if their child is mature or will be mature enough
Agreed.
to handle it.
Mhm.
Because I don't receive the same thing that you receive in the manner in which you receive it, and we could be sitting and looking at the same exact thing.
Mhm.
Sherry, did you have a subscription to Highlights magazines as a kid?
I love Tyler.
That was my thing.
I
That was my book.
actually didn't have a subscription, but I was able to read it in the library.
Oh,
There you
that
go.
was
And
my
I'm
book.
actually going to get highlights.
Yeah. Because sometimes, the things that we put in front of our children is what's going to help develop them,
Absolutely.
and like them highlight books, I think they came out every week.
Yeah,
Do
They-
have them?
I
You
think
know-
that, yeah, they do have them, and they have different levels.
They came out every week.
Oh my God,
'Cause
that was my book.
I know I got them every daggone week,
Yeah.
so
I didn't think I had a subscription, but I would go to the dentist, and the dentist had.
Oh, they
tons of
had that. Any doctor's office, dentist's office, they all
them.
had
Kept
them.
me quiet the whole visit.
over.
But I think, Terry, going back to what you said, and Sherry, I mean, I think it's situational when we're teaching certain things, or these books that are coming out, they're very situational, right? They're based on a specific situation that a child might be encountering. And I'll say, to your point, it's not a blanket thing. She's got the whole collection coming up. It's not a blanket where I'm gonna, this book that you have, or this book that you heard about, is not something that I'm going to utilize for every single child. It's for a child that is in a position that is what is they're encountering in their life, their experience. So I think, again, we don't all read every book that's out there. We read books based on our interests, based on our situations, what we're experiencing. That's when we pick a book, or a topic, or whatever have you, that we want to read into.
But if I want to piggyback off of that, and that's basically what we're saying with Arrested Development, each person is not going to see it the same.
Absolutely.
They're not going to understand it the same.
Mhm.
The therapy that you're going to need to help you get through it, if you haven't, that's situational. You got to find the right therapist that's going to sit down, whether they're a general practitioner or one that specializes in that specific specialty. You have to know that it's going to take time, effort, and energy for that to work for you,
Absolutely.
or
Absolutely.
whomever's experiencing it. Let me say that.
Or even just sitting down with someone who's been through the experience. Because I'm gonna tell you now, for me, I might not seek a counselor, but I'm gonna seek someone who has had that experience and that can give me the knowledge or tell me what they're going through, so that I can make my own decision on how I'm going to deal with it. Because some psychologists, you can go to them and they need a psychiatrist.
You talking about Doris? What are you talking about, Doris?
So look.
She talking about Doris.
Look,
I actually love Doris. Me and Doris was on
Doris.
talking last night.
Doris is the bomb. Let's leave our sistership Doris at.
Doris is my buddy.
She's amazing.
Little cuckoo, but she my buddy.
She's amazing.
I love her.
She's gone
Doris
through
is in jail
experiences.
right now on Facebook.
She's
so
on Facebook jail.
We text each other back and forth. every
Well,
day.
let's say this, and I say that and I'm saying this to help you with that, because sometimes You have people that have experienced it
Yes,
Right.
and never got help.
never got
That's
help.
true.
You have
Gotta be
you
careful.
have people that have therapists that
Mhm.
can't help you. That's why I
Mhm.
said you have to find someone
Mhm.
Well, maybe you just need
that
to
will
meditate.
suit you. Well, you definitely, first of all, the one thing that
Meditation
you're
is
gonna
always
have to
good.
do,
Surround yourself with a bunch of crystals and all that stuff.
It
They got
goes back to
positive
knowing,
energy.
knowing you.
one of the callers had noted, said, you gotta go into self.
Mhm.
Right.
A part of healing is finding out what
What's
what
going on?
needs to be
So,
healed.
right.
So the only person that can do that is you.
Is you.
You can tell
And
somebody,
acknowledging it. Right.
Hey, look, Nabi said, what about the lost development, the child that never knew about highlights?
Thank you for that.
Yeah,
I'm sure there's a lot of children that didn't know anything about highlights, but I'm sure they got some other type of educational materials
Yeah.
that they work through.
You know what?
Libs, maybe.
but but you know what was
Zick and
that-
Jane, right?
Oh, yeah.
C-Spot Run. That was a good point.
See spot, right?
That was a good point, because you know what? Now that I think about it, see, to me, highlights was second nature. You know,
Mhm.
so
It was
He-
normal for you.
yeah, he like he just said, what about the kid who didn't know anything about highlights?
Yeah.
And I just said to myself after I read that, like,
That's true.
how could that be?
Yeah.
You know, but
Yeah.
you're right.
But it's possible.
It's a possibility that wow.
However,
So let's
there's
tell Nabi. Nabi, they still have highlights.
it's just like the Christmas edition.
Scholastic is out there. Share it with your grandchildren. Give them something that your children may not have had.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. But however, Navi, there's other books and other articles or the whatever had you to teach you highlights wasn't the only thing out there.
Mhm.
I laugh about Mad Libs because I really did like Mad Libs, but that wasn't a highlights. But I think back to what you were stating, Lady Wisdom, with your wisdom. To your point, think about the traumas that you're dealing with. When you're talking about domestic violence, you go through counseling for domestic violence. When you're going through a rape scenario, you're going through counseling because of that situation. So there's no such thing as a blanket counseling session with any one individual. It's all based on what you've experienced, on the right type of counseling that you need, or the right type of counseling that you go seek. Or to your point, you go to a generalist just to get to what it is that you've experienced, to say, okay, now we got it. Now I know where you need to go, to who to talk to. So again, it is very situational, to your point. So with that said, I mean, this is such a
It's a broad topic, but it's so huge.
right,
It could go so many levels. We only just talked about the emotional part,
right.
and only a part of the emotional part. But when you look at society, when we talk about the examples, we got to stop watching shows that you feel are contradictory to what the kind of life that you want your child to follow. You have to stop patronizing and buying the music of those that are degrading to males and females.
Right.
There's a lot of people that are not living the lives that they're singing about, or not living the lives that they're rapping about. You got these young ladies that are idolizing certain things that they just shouldn't. They're dressing a certain way. And no disrespect to those who wear wigs. I have family members that wear wigs. But when I was growing up, and I can't speak for other people, I speak of my experience. When I used to see a woman with heels, leggings.
Take it from over there.
Oh, take it here. We got a call coming in. This is Sistahship. Why do I think this is calling back in?
Yep.
Can you hear us?
What's up? Yeah, I can.
Okay, you back on. You back on live with us.
Oh, I don't know where y'all at.
Hey, you got to pull a quote about positive energy.
It was an accident or something.
Can you hear me, Og?
I think he downed it. He dialed in by mistake.
Yeah.
Hey,
Oh, he might have.
I don't think he
But
calls us to be
Call-
calling us.
call back. I'm gonna take the call to the board. Call back.
I think he butts out us. But I'm sorry. Go back to what you were saying. That's what we call a butts out. Here
Okay.
we go again.
All right, there
All
we
right.
go. There we go.
He's on.
You there?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right.
We're live on.
Now I wanted you to call back in because you know about positive energy, right? And the crystals and all those things like that. And we were just talking.
This is the perfect time. This is the perfect time for me to have what's it called, a plug. I just want plug.
Oh.
No, we're not laughing. No, man. Not laughing at you.
That's a plug.
Keeping the Saba.
Uh-huh.
It's called keeping the Saba.
Keeping the Saba.
Is the origin of the Sabbath. But pardon me, folks. Thank you for the plug.
Yeah. So you know about all the all that stuff. I don't know about those positive energy things and the different crystals, and people walk around with the different types of crystals to help them, emotionally.
The energy part of it.
Yeah, can you expound on that with Arrested Development, how it can help people out?
Absolutely. I like this part. Okay, so the site, my online store is called Keeping the Saba. I haven't built it all the way. I'm supposed to talk to Steph about the marketing. That's another
I hear you. I got you.
Yeah, but Saba comes from is the root word of Sabbath,
Mm-hmm.
and we were taught through Judaism, Christianity, and Judaism that the Sabbath was only one day. Well, the Sabbath is natural people, people of the earth,
Mm-hmm.
and the Sabbath is every day. So in terms of pieces of the puzzle, when they put that together, crystals of mine, we charge. We are energy. Emotion is energy and motion.
Mm-hmm.
So we charge these crystals. So certain crystals have certain colors, and those colors are aligned with the spectrum of the rainbow, which are the chakras. You have 7 main chakras, and each chakra is a channel, and it has its own intelligence. And you have the root, which is red. You have the sacral, that's orange. You have the solar plexus, that's yellow. You have the throat chakra, that's blue. The pineal gland is indigo, and the crown chakra is violet. And then you have a portal over the top. Like, I don't know if y'all ever heard of the lotus flower, but there's a lotus. If you ever look at Buddha, he has this thing over his head, and it's the portal. It's basically the energy that comes from. We all have auras. Our auras can be. Our auras could be like Wakanda size, protecting us from certain things and certain energies, or draw certain things to us. So that's why I was saying that getting into self. Getting into self, getting back into self.
But how can it fix us? How can it fix us when we're broken?
How can it fix us? Well,
because a lot of people are just broken.
Excuse me?
I said a lot of people just broken. They need someone that can fix them.
Okay, I understand. So that's the thing that they gave us a quick fix. They gave us prayer, and they gave us prayer. We're not saying that prayer doesn't work, but understanding your deity. When you get into, you have 5 senses, you have 5 elements. I don't want to get too scientific because I have to figure out really how to present this because it's something that's a space that we're going into, and that's truly what sovereignty is. Sovereignty is being able to govern yourself. And being able to govern yourself is meditation. How do you fix that? So, every morning for the last 4 weeks, I've been meditating every morning. That's the first thing that I do. Because they say in the theta wave state, before you go to sleep, right before you go to sleep, that's the best time to program yourself. And when you first I mark the wall. And I've been doing that for 4 weeks. And it's just, we have a lot of ideology. We have a lot of ideologies that actually keep, I'm always talk about paradigm shifting. And when we talk about our history and those experiences, it's keeping our bodies in that space. So, it's best, I just told Ryan just now, we talk about the pursuit of happiness and we do it outside of ourselves. That doesn't make sense because it's an emotion.
Yeah.
We should be able to feel, I don't have to pursue a happiness that's inside of me.
Right.
So what happens is we're dealing with momentary gratification.
Right.
And then
Instant
we go for
gratification.
instant gratification.
Right.
So these things, like, we have to know how to, Bud said he picked up on something that I told him like last week. Find 10 things every day to be grateful for. Appreciate something. Find 10 things every day. And that's going to heighten your vibration alone. When you learn something new or you find gratification, it breaks your neurons, they get rewired. You understand? And you get rewired and refired. And those neurons is like it's an electric shock that hits the atmosphere and it has to come back to you. So that's how you do it. We have systems that do that. Now we're in a society that they're caught in traumas. It's definitely a lot of mental illness. Because it's an imbalance. And what we'll do is, okay, seek mental health. Seek something outside of you. They taught us that through education. They taught us that in the church. They taught us that in the hospitals. We have to go to somebody. Everything is to go outside of you and deal with matter, what already exists. When we're co-creators. Everybody in all of this stuff is an illusion. So if we learn how, like I said earlier, the mind is the brain in action. If we actually understand that the meditation is the exercise. It's the observance of what the meditation did after you meditate. I meditate for 43 minutes every day. Some people can't sit still for 5 minutes. Some people can't sit still for 2 minutes. And then
That's called ADD.
ADHD?
Right? All different dads.
They call it that, but really it's just a vibration of that. It's like, what are we going to call somebody that doesn't work out? We're going to give that a name too?
Fat Boy Fresh.
Meditation is an exercise. You're exercising your brain. You're actually paying attention to all of these thoughts and giving yourself a mantra, giving your brain, your mind something to focus on every time it trips. And it's showing you that these are the things that are on your mind, that's in your body, that the feeling, all of it, it's showing you that you never, we haven't, that's where the healing comes from. We haven't cleansed our brain. Our mind is always active. Even when we're asleep, our subconscious is still going.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? I was saying earlier about Dianetics. There's a part in the book when I read it where he said that basically, all right, this woman was pregnant and she got into a fight with her husband and he pushed her down. The tear fell. He pushed her down and she was unconscious. And he said, "You stupid bee, you'll never be nothing." Right? A car passed, he's unconscious. Her subconscious heard the car pass, the chair crash, the chair fall, and she heard those words. But those same actions, now, the child has those same actions. The child grows up feeling like he's a stupid bee, he'll never be nothing. That's the first thing. And then it's funny because it's called engrams, psychosomatic illnesses. So now it creates a situation where they have multiple personality disorder. So where they might hear car go past the same way.
And triggers them.
Later on in their life, they might hear a car go past the same way. And they'll take on the role of the father at first because it was the dominant person. And then if it's somebody that's more dominant than them, then they'll take on the role of the mother. And these are the things that they don't teach us and they don't tell us about. That's why you'll have Beyonce on stage with millions of people while she was pregnant. They knew what they were doing. They were making sure that their child understood their place in society. And that's something that we're going to the experience too much. And when we go into the experience, we're conditioning our children to continue the evolution of that same structure. So, you know, I love the Black experience. I heard somebody say, well, the 1960s. Well, the 1960s, 1933 was very, it was a year that was pivotal for this whole country, this whole design, this whole colonial capitalistic, this democracy, that's why I said we're all traumatized. You understand? We all go through arrested development because that's the development of this institution. We live in an industrial plantation. That's what this is. And until we're able to, like I took the vaccine, and there's a guy that I grew up with. You were the last person I would have thought. And I'm asking him, I'm like, you're a rebel without a cause. And then I can understand, like, why would they say a rebel without a cause?
Kyrie Irving.
Isn't it a rebel with a cause?
Absolutely.
We weren't paying attention to this stuff. The revolution won't be televised. Shit, we streaming it.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's right.
So to go in our history, I read a book called The Olive Tree and the Lexus.
Just quickly, we got 1 minute, so we need to close this out. So
Oh, my bad.
that's all right.
Oh, my bad.
We gotta get you back. We gotta get you back on the show. That we gotta do though. That we gotta do though.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was trying to make it.
I know. We appreciate you. We do appreciate your insights and everything that you've given us today on the phone, the energy. And again, your response to just the calling here on Arrested Development. We do appreciate you. And again, we'll have you back on for sure. I know TP will as well. But with that said, we're going to have to say goodbye to everybody today. Thank you again, Lady Wisdom, Tiffany Cole Bling, Terry with his comments up in here on
told the
the
truth.
Sistahship. And we going to get him some, well, you know, he doesn't need to cook. So I guess we'll have to figure that one out. But anyway, anybody who needs to own highlights, they're still available in case you didn't know.
Scholastic.
With that said,
Join us on October 23rd.
join us October 23rd at the vendor market at 746 Milford Road in East Stroudsburg. Live up on a entrepreneur, someone. This is at We Share Corp. And again, if you are a vendor that's interested, reach out to Tiffany Co. or myself, your girl, Stefania. With that said, this is the Sistahship Network. We love y'all. Peace and love. Have a happy, blessed day. We'll see you again next week as we talk about really one of the arrested developments, which is domestic violence. So with that said, thank you all for joining us today on the Sistahship Network. Thank you to Genesis Radio. And we'll be back next week right here on the Sistahship.
This is Cancer Awareness Month, so I think we're coming in.
Yes.